Up next on our program is a man who is the chairman of the Forsyth County Republican Party. He is the man that understands the necessary bridge between the Tea Party and finding the conservative Republicans we can support. He understands that. You're going to hear from him now. He is a constitutionalist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Scott Cumbie.
Hey folks, it's great to be here today. I'm thrilled at the number of people we have. I wish we had this hillside filled, but this is just fantastic, and I'm honored to be here among you today. Let me start with an unpaid political advertisement for Justice Paul Newby. There was a candidate forum Tuesday night in Winston-Salem for the judicial candidate, Supreme Court and Court of Appeals. And let me read you what Justice Newby's opponent had to say in that forum. This was following the question about a living constitution. Do you believe in a living constitution, or should the Constitution be interpreted based on original intent? And this is what Justice Newby's opponent said. He said, "I believe that the judges and justices of the Supreme Court of North Carolina are bound not only by the holdings of the Supreme Court of the United States in construing the federal prosecution, but also, and this is the dangerous part, also should follow the analytical movements that are used in making those decisions, so that I don't know that there is any occasion for which a justice of the Supreme Court of North Carolina uses either of the two approaches that you mentioned. If elected, I will follow the analytical approaches that have been utilized by the Supreme Court in construing the federal Constitution." In other words, if he wins, he's going to make it up. He doesn't care what the Constitution has to say. It's going to mean whatever he wants to say. We have to make sure that Justice Newby is re-elected to the Supreme Court. Now, let me move on to my comments. I am not aware of a period in history where a nation with a superior military power did not use that power to take from or to subjugate its neighbors, or to control and impose its will on its neighbors, or to extend its power and reach. There is no power on this earth that could stand in our way if we chose to take land, property, and resources from any other nation on earth. But we don't. What is it that makes us different from the other nations of the world? Some of you may remember in the early 1970s a commentator by the name of Gordon Sinclair, a Canadian who wrote a commentary called The Americans. Let me quote a few lines from what he had to say. He said, "This Canadian thinks it is time to speak up for the Americans as the most generous and possibly the least appreciated people in all the earth. As long as 60 years ago, when I first started to read newspapers, I read of floods on the Yellow River and the Yangtze. Well, who rushed in with men and money to help? The Americans did, that's who. They have helped control floods on the Nile, the Amazon, the Ganges, and the Niger. Germany, Japan, and to a lesser extent Britain and Italy were lifted out of the debris of World War II by the Americans, who poured billions of dollars and forgave other billions in debts. The Marshall Plan, the Truman Policy, all pumped billions upon billions of dollars into discouraged countries. And now newspapers in those countries are writing about the decadent, warmongering Americans. I can name for you 5,000 times when the Americans raced to help of other people in trouble. Can you name for me even one time when someone else raced to the Americans in trouble? Our neighbors have faced it alone, and I am one Canadian who is tired of hearing them kicked around. They'll come out of this thing with their flag high, and when they do, they're entitled to thumb their noses at the lands that are gloating over their present troubles. I hope Canada is not one of these." Gordon Sinclair wrote that almost 40 years ago, but it sounds like he could have written it yesterday. What is it that makes us as Americans different? In 1814, Francis Scott Key watched from a British warship at Fort McHenry was bombed with cannon fire. After 25 hours of bombardment, Francis Scott Key, while waiting for the sun to come up so he could see if the flag was still flying over the fort, began to write those words, which became our national anthem. What is it that makes us different? Well, listen to the fourth verse. If you were here earlier, you heard Ramona Tim sing this. He wrote, "Oh, thus be it ever, when free men shall stand between their loved home and the war's desolation. Blessed with victory and peace, may the heaven-rescued land praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must, when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust. And the star-spangled banner in triumph shall wave, o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave." What makes us different? What is it about us, a nation who has had a single constitution for 225 years, while every other nation on earth has had multiple constitutions or governments in that same period of time? What is it about us, a ragtag bunch of people that fought and won independence from the most powerful nation on earth? What is it about us, a group of 13 independent colonies that in less than 200 years became the most powerful military might the world has ever seen? What is it about us, a nation with a very short history, that would become an economic power so great that it would drive the economies of the entire planet? What is it about us, Americans, that produce more inventions, more technology, more art, more music than all the other countries of the world combined? What is it about us? I don't believe our founders ever dreamed what our nation would become, but like the Pilgrims before them, they recognized that we would be like a city on a hill, providing hope and promise of freedom for the world if we would hold to some very simple truths. As Thomas Jefferson has expressed it, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Our founders recognized that our rights and our freedoms only exist because of our Creator. It was this belief that made the pastors of the American colonies the men that the British most feared. It was the pastors, the Black Robe Regiment, that taught these self-evident truths to the American colonies. It is the fact that we believe we have a Creator and that our Creator has given us our rights, that we are set apart and unlike any other nation on earth. As the Declaration of Independence says, our rights are given to us by God, and the purpose of government is to secure those rights. During the Senate confirmation hearings, when our newest Supreme Court Justice was asked if she believed in unalienable rights, she responded, "You should not want me to act in any way on the basis of such a belief. I think you should want me to act on the basis of law." When we have a Supreme Court Justice that does not believe that our rights are given to us by God, but instead believes that our rights are given to us by government, then folks, we have no rights. What the government giveth, the government can taketh away. It is this philosophical change in our government that creates the greatest danger for us and our children. Today we are celebrating the day 225 years ago when the Philadelphia Convention, what we now call the Constitutional Convention, completed its work. Today we often hear the Constitution referred to as a living document. Did the founders intend for the Constitution to be living? It all depends on how you define the term. The founders intended for the document to change over time because in Article 5 they provided two ways for we the people to change the Constitution: through our elected representatives, and only through our elected representatives. The problem today is that our Constitution is being changed by unelected people without the consent of we the people. When the judiciary discovers new meaning that was hidden in the Constitution for 100 or 200 years, or when the judiciary changes the definition of terms in the Constitution, then the courts are amending our Constitution without our consent. If this is what someone means by living, then no, this is not what the founders intended. A Constitution that can be changed without our consent is a Constitution written with erasable ink. Our founders wrote a Constitution to empower a federal government with only certain specific powers in order to limit that government, to prevent it from intruding on the rights of the people in the states. The Constitutional Convention spent a hot summer in a closed room with an infestation of flies, arguing, debating, and discussing each word that we now see in that document. Each and every word in that document has a meaning that we can easily read and understand for ourselves. If the words that our founders wrote in the Constitution do not mean what they mean, then they mean nothing. If those who take a solemn oath of office to support and defend the Constitution do not defend the words as they are written, then we can never trust that they will ever do what is right. We can never trust that they will work to secure our rights. We can never trust that we'll be able to safely exercise our rights. When Paul Revere left Boston on April 18, 1775 to warn that the British were coming, Reverend Clark was one of the many that responded by calling up the local militia. Just before dawn, the militia assembled on the green as the British were coming down the Boston Road into Lexington, Massachusetts. 100 Minutemen stood as 300 elite British light infantrymen formed in front of them. Major Pitcairn called out to the Americans, "Disperse, ye rebels! Lay down your arms and disperse!" Reverend Clark ran among the Minutemen and called out to them, "Stand your ground! Do not fire unless fired upon. If they mean to have war, let it begin here." Folks, we are living in a day when the odds seem so stacked against us. The left and their mouthpieces in the media make all sorts of unfounded accusations against those of us who consider ourselves patriotic, God-fearing Americans. For too many years, the left has too often been joined by people that carry the name of my party and who seem to have only slightly less contempt for our Constitution than the left does. If you listen carefully, the message we hear from these same people is a familiar one. It's the same message that we heard from the British in 1775. Disperse, ye rebels. Lay down your arms and disperse. We are in a war for our freedom. This upcoming election is one battle in that war. Win or lose in November, we must remember that there are many, many more battles ahead. If we are going to reclaim our freedoms and regain the right to again govern ourselves, if we are going to provide a free nation to our sons and daughters and their sons and daughters, then I leave you with one simple message, the same message that Reverend Clark gave on Lexington Green in 1775. Stand your ground. If they mean to have war, let it begin here.
Scott Cumbie, Forsyth County, thank you so much. We have a lost and found department here, and that's right over here with Major Dave in our Tea Party booth of mobile operations. If you lose anything, you can't find it, a person or otherwise, we'll help you get together down here. And we have an item already in Lost and Found, so check your personal belongings. If you're missing something and you can describe what we found, it'll be under the table here. I want to recognize my friend Kevin Reese, who's in the audience. He's putting together with some other folks a Meet the Candidates night at the Clingman Community Center on Clingman Road in Rhonda. How many of you are anywhere Wilkes County or Rhonda area? There's a few of you patriots. Good. If you're not, you're going to have a chance to meet Dan Forrest, Ed Goodwin, other council of state operation people that are running for these various positions in government. And that is Tuesday, October 2nd. At 6:30 at the Clingman Community Center, and thank you for that effort. Ladies and gentlemen, up next is a man who right now is backstage eating donuts, but he brings the voice of the Tea Party across the nation. He started out singing the song "Life is a Country Song," and after a divorce and literally getting caught in the middle of a hurricane, he's kind of changed his tune, and he knows what's really important in life. He's the official Tea Party singer with the hits. Things like, "We ain't gone away." We ain't, are we? And another one of his hits, "Obama, you're fired." Please welcome. You ready for him? Bruce Ballant. Bruce, come on up.
Hey, after a couple songs later on, I'm going to sing a song with you guys, okay? We're going to go out in the audience and we do a little "We Ain't Going Away." And maybe "Obama, You're Fired." This one's written by